For years, they insisted it was just friendship. Two actors who shared an extraordinary experience on screen and then went their separate ways. But 6 years later, whispers have grown louder, and the silence that once protected them has begun to crack. Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson, the on-screen couple who once set the world on fire, are back in the spotlight, and this time, it's not because of a movie. It began back in 2014, when 50 Shades of Grey went into production. No one expected the chemistry between Jamie and Dakota to feel so real, so magnetic, so utterly consuming. Even before the film's release, journalists were writing about the electricity between them. The way she laughed at his jokes off camera. The way he looked at her between takes. On screen, they portrayed Christian Grey and Anastasia Steele, two people trapped between control and surrender. Off-screen, something unspoken seemed to echo those same emotions. Dakota once said in an interview, "You can't fake trust." And she was right. The film demanded an unusual kind of vulnerability, physical, emotional, psychological. They had to rely on each other completely, and in that reliance, something deeper formed. Jamie would later describe Dakota as the only person who truly understood what that experience felt like. The connection they built wasn't scripted. It grew naturally through shared exhaustion, late-night conversations, and quiet laughter when the cameras stopped rolling. But that connection came with a cost. Jamie was newly married to Amelia Warner, and Dakota was still defining her path in Hollywood. Rumors swirled, photos, interviews, headlines twisting every glance into a story. Yet neither of them ever gave the public what it wanted, a confession. Instead, they mastered the art of silence. They smiled when asked about each other, they deflected questions with grace, and they built a wall between what was real and what the world wanted to believe. As the trilogy continued, that wall began to show cracks. Their final press tour was full of moments fans couldn't ignore, the lingering looks, the playful teasing, the subtle gestures that spoke louder than words. One moment in particular, when Dakota reached out to fix Jamie's collar during an interview, became an instant viral clip. The way he looked at her, half amused, half tender, sent fans into a frenzy. "There's something there," people said. "You can see it." Then came the silence. After the final film wrapped, both retreated into their own worlds. Jamie focused on new roles, darker, more complex ones. Dakota turned to indie films and her relationship with Chris Martin. Publicly, their paths diverged. Privately, insiders say, they stayed in touch, brief calls, messages, quiet support. It wasn't a typical Hollywood friendship, it was something more elusive, something undefined. In those 6 years, the absence itself became a kind of story. The more they avoided speaking about each other, the more people wanted to know. Why the distance? Why the silence? Was it respect for their partners, or was it an unspoken agreement to protect a bond that words could never do justice to? Behind the scenes, the few who worked closely with them hinted at the truth. A former crew member once said, "What you saw on screen wasn't acting." They had this rhythm, this unspoken understanding. When one moved, the other followed. It was real, maybe not romantic, but real. That line, "maybe not romantic," became the heart of the mystery. And then, almost 6 years later, a single photograph surfaced, a candid shot from a private event, showing Jamie and Dakota in quiet conversation. The way he leaned in, the way she smiled, it reignited everything. Fans called it proof. The internet exploded with speculation. Had they stayed in touch all along? Was there more to the story than either of them had ever admitted? Neither spoke a word, but maybe they didn't need to. Their silence has always been its own language, one built from years of understanding, from the blurred lines between performance and emotion. As the world looks again at Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson, the question remains, was it ever just friendship? Or was their connection something deeper? A bond forged in vulnerability and sealed in 6 years of silence? One thing is certain. Whatever existed between them, it never truly disappeared. It just lived quietly, beneath the surface, waiting for the moment when the truth, finally, could no longer stay hidden. The photograph was only a moment, a few seconds captured in grainy pixels. but it was enough to reopen a story that had never really ended. Jamie Dornan and Dakota Johnson, standing close, smiling in a way that felt almost too familiar. It wasn't a red carpet, not a press event. It was private, and maybe that's what made it so powerful. 6 years after the final 50 Shades film, the silence between them finally felt like it was saying something. For years, both had walked carefully along the line between truth and discretion. Jamie, a husband and father of 3, had always protected his family from Hollywood's curiosity. Dakota, deeply private despite her fame, had never indulged the tabloid narratives. Yet when their names reappeared together, something in their faces, a softness, a quiet warmth, made people wonder if that line had ever really been erased. A source close to the pair claimed that the connection between them had never faded. "They've always had a deep understanding," the source said. "Even after all these years, they share something only the two of them can understand. It's not about romance, it's about a bond that never broke." But for millions of fans who had followed their on-screen intimacy, that distinction hardly mattered. To them, Jamie and Dakota were always Christian and Anna, two souls entangled in ways that even the actors themselves couldn't fully separate. Behind closed doors, the reality was quieter. After 50 Shades, both had sought to redefine themselves, to step away from the roles that defined them in the public eye. Jamie took on challenging projects, desperate to prove he was more than a symbol of desire. Dakota dove into independent cinema, carving out an identity built on depth and authenticity. But no matter how far they ran from 50 Shades, the world kept pulling them back to each other. Interviews, memes, fan edits, endless speculation. Their names were stitched together in internet folklore. And yet, amid all that noise, something sincere survived. Every so often, in a rare interview, one would mention the other with a kind of reverence. Dakota once said, "Jamie means so much to me. We went through something intense together. It bonded us in ways people will never understand." Jamie echoed the same sentiment years later. "Dakota is someone I trust completely. She's family in a strange way, not by blood, but by experience." Those words painted a picture not of scandal, but of connection, of two people who had lived through an extraordinary storm together and emerged with respect and affection intact. Still, the heart doesn't always fit neatly into the boundaries we draw. Maybe what tied them wasn't love in the conventional sense, but something that exists in the gray, something unnamed, but deeply real. When fans dissect every detail, the way Jamie's eyes soften when Dakota's name comes up, or how Dakota once slipped and referred to him as "my person" during a press event, it's easy to see why people believe the story runs deeper. But perhaps the beauty of their bond lies in what remains unsaid. They never confirmed, never denied. They simply existed. Two lives that briefly ran parallel, touching at the edges in ways words can't capture. 6 years of silence isn't accidental. It's a choice. Maybe it was protection, for themselves, for the people they love, for the truth that doesn't belong to anyone else. Because sometimes, silence is the only way to keep something pure in a world that constantly wants to dissect it. In the end, the secret that finally came out wasn't scandalous at all. It was simple: that what Jamie and Dakota shared was real, and real things don't fade. Time, distance, and circumstance may have reshaped it, but the core remained untouched. Whether it was love, friendship, or something in between, it was theirs, private, profound, and unspoken. As one insider said, they never stopped caring about each other. They just learned to love differently. And maybe that's the truest version of the story, not the Hollywood fantasy fans crave, but a quieter truth about two people who connected deeply and carried that connection through years of silence. When asked recently if she still talks to Jamie, Dakota smiled in that knowing way that says more than words ever could. "Some bonds don't need to be explained," she said simply. Behind every movie scene, every rumor, and every photograph, there's a story that belongs only to them, one that no headline could ever fully tell. Because sometimes, what happens in the quiet, in the pauses between words, in the spaces between years, is more powerful than any confession. 6 years of silence didn't erase their story. It preserved it. And now, as the world leans closer to listen, maybe the real secret is this: that even in the chaos of fame, two people once found something true, and chose to keep it hidden, not out of shame, but out of love.